stop at the Migration Summit. You're queued up for transforming the future of work, the power of systems thinking for collaboration, action, and AI and migration. The Migration Summit 2024 is organized by the MIT Emerging Talent, Namal, and Karam Foundation. This is a week-long global convening designed to build bridges between diverse communities of displaced learners, universities, companies, social enterprises, policymakers, employers, and governments around key challenges and opportunities for refugees and migrant communities. This year, we're exploring the theme of unlocking and engaging talent pathways for dignified work through virtual and in-person events hosted by participating organizations around the world. So welcome. Introduce yourselves in the chat. I'm going to introduce the session and our speakers, and I hand it off to them. The Future of Work Summit took place on June 20th at the Geneva Graduate Institute as a sister and supporting companion to our summit here. The TASC platform explored some key issues around the future of work, and they're here today to summarize and introduce us to some of those concepts and findings from that summit. So I'm happy to welcome Kitrhona, Cerri, the Executive Director of TASC Platform, Maria Maxey, Senior Advisor, and Yasmeen Chaudhry. Welcome. Welcome to all of you. You're good colleagues and good friends, and we're eager to hear from you and your findings. Welcome to the Migration Summit.
Thank you so much, Dimitri, for the warm welcome and the lovely music and tone to set off this session. Delighted to be seeing the messages coming in from people all around the world. That's exciting. My name is Kitrhona Cerri. As Dimitri said, I'm Executive Director of the TASC platform based at the Geneva Graduate Institute. For those of you who don't know us, we're an initiative based in international Geneva, which is the heart of UN organizations, multilateral collaboration, and increasingly multi-stakeholder collaboration. And we help to facilitate that with a focus on bringing forward-looking perspectives on the future of work. In that vein, just last week, we held our Future of Work Summit here in Geneva, where we positioned our summit as a sister summit to the Migration Summit. That is because we chose this year to focus on two critical issues that are at the front of international discourse here in Geneva, and I think around the world. Those are migration and artificial intelligence. We love the Migration Summit team because they share our overarching goal to shift mindsets, build trust, and shape practical collaborative efforts based on real tools that we can get our hands on and use. So with that in mind, this session aims to share insights from the summit and to introduce a tool that we have been experimenting with and exploring through the summit and beyond around systems thinking. So systems thinking can be a very specialized field. We're going to introduce it today in a very light touch way, and really as a way you can use this systems approach as a tool for informing collaboration, silo breaking, and especially dealing with issues related to the unknown. So with that introduction, let me do the scariest part of this session, which is seeing if my screen sharing works. Ta-da! And introduce you all to our slides. So we'll start with a little introduction. You'll hear from myself about the Future of Work Summit writ large and what happened last week, and a little about the way that we think about systems thinking. And then I'll hand over to Maria Maxey, our senior advisor here at the TASC platform on labor and social policy, to really bring to life those issues of migration, AI, and the interconnectivity between them from her own expertise and from what we heard at the summit. Then it'll be over to you for an exercise using Mentimeter. So the slide you see on your screen will become interactive a little later in the session. And if you want to already start playing with that, you can use the QR code or go to menti.com and use the code you see on the top of the screen there, 37797543, and you'll be able to interact with us that way through the session. That's us. This is an rather in-depth overview of the Future of Work Summit, just to give you a feel for what came out of the session and what we did last week on Thursday. Our theme was around collaborating in the face of the unknown. So we started the day in the spirit of Geneva with the subject of governance and what challenges we face when we're trying to create policies for subjects that are relatively new or out of our own context. And that's where the themes of artificial intelligence and migration both really come into play as a technical unknown and as a very human unknown coming into our labor markets and workplaces. We started with a conversation with the ambassador of Kenya, Ambassador James Waweru, and he really brought to life what this means on the ground in the Kenyan context. We then went into 3 rounds of roundtable discussions, and today we'll be playing through a very light touch version of this with all of you, where we looked at systems maps and use those as a way to bring to life different perspectives on a challenge. We talked about how viewing, taking a more systemic approach could stimulate ideas around new collaborations, and how this approach could help us think about bringing together topics that are not often thrown together, like artificial intelligence and migration. And then we closed off the day with the subject of working together across international organizations. And we had 3 great speakers from the International Labour Organization, from UNHCR, the Refugee Organization, and from ITU, the International Telecommunications Union. All 3 of those organizations have initiated in the last couple of years new initiatives around large-scale collaboration beyond the regular stakeholders of their organizations. And they shared insights around the challenges, the drivers behind reaching out beyond their usual boundaries, beyond their usual suspects, to move the needle in a practical way on their respective topics, and in particular on these subjects of migration and artificial intelligence. So you can find out more about the Future of Work Summit on our website. There's plenty of recordings. I think the topic really resonates with the Migration Summit. So I encourage you, if it's of interest, to dive in, and we'll share with you a little more as we go through. So to embed us in the spirit of the Migration Summit around practical tools, I am going to take the liberty of presenting our co-chair, Professor Cedric Dupont's slides on an initiation to systems thinking. I am attempting to fill big shoes here, so I'll give you a light touch approach to systems thinking, but it's really just to set the tone for the kind of task and the kind of mindset shift that we're aiming to stimulate with these sort of new discussions. So beginning with the idea of systems, what is a system? And Cedric will tell us, Professor Dupont will tell us, that systems are really subjective. They're based on the perspective that we're coming from. They're constructed by people as a set of interconnected patterns or structures, which are often classified in terms of their function, as you see here in the first paragraph. We create them as a series of connections, and we look at them as a way to engage with complexity in the real world. So rather than things being very linear, being very straightforward, being two-dimensional, the system gives us a clearer vision of the complexity that we're dealing with in subjects such as the one we're talking about today. From looking at systems, we get to systems thinking, which is the kind of language that underlies the communication around those complexities and the interdependencies that we see in a system. So it's a way to look beyond the facade of a problem and try and think about the underlying patterns, the underlying relationships in the system, and the points that we might be able to leverage to influence that wider system. So to get us out of our day-to-day grind and to take a bigger picture and look at different ways that we can influence the bigger scene that we're playing in. So when is systems thinking particularly appropriate? It's when we're not sure we understand the problem, let alone the solution. So when you're really facing a complex space with many different perspectives, a diversity of opinions, and maybe even conflicting opinions amongst stakeholders, systems thinking helps us to lay that out and engage with that level of complexity. Secondly, when there are diverse and dynamic interconnections. So the idea is that a system is not static, but constantly changing. And thirdly, when we want to make sure that, we make change at a broader scale. One interesting thing we did in the summit, which we won't have too much time to do today, is to look at locating ourselves within a system. So it really helps you to think, okay, this is the scope that I'm working in, but this is the broader space around me that I'm seeking to influence in one way or another. Systems mapping builds on that by drawing out the system, helping us think about our assumptions, our beliefs, how we understand the system, helping us, as I said, orient ourselves where we sit in that system, communicate to others around how we're influencing it, synthesize, connect, and extrapolate from those examples. And then finally, this is what I think, really want to get to with this audience. We don't want to make you experts in systems thinking, but we do want to add a little sprinkle of systems mindedness when you're going around your day-to-day work. That's the ability to think holistically while you're still acting locally in your roles and tasks at hand. Pay attention to what's important, not only to what's quantifiable. And I think most importantly for us is to celebrate complexity, not be afraid of complexity, but really embrace it and grapple with it, because it's important when we do deal with complex beyond complicated subjects. So with that said, we're going to go into our exercise in a moment. But first, I'd like to hand over to Maria to take that broad overview of the summit and the idea of systems thinking and bring it to life a little bit in terms of the challenges and the opportunities we face in the space of migration and artificial intelligence. Maria, over to you.
Fantastic, Kitrhona. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for hosting us today, and a big thank you to the online participants. As Kitrhona mentioned, at the core of systems thinking approach is the idea that we celebrate complexity, but not only celebrate complexity, but also unpack complexity, unpack the different systems and try to understand how they interconnect. So what we did during the Future of Work Summit was actually to see the intersection between AI, the AI system, and the migration system. I would say that I will start with a positive message. I would say that what emerged from the Future of Work Summit is a positive vision, a vision of a world empowered by technology and enriched by migration. But we discussed certain challenges and opportunities pertaining to that vision. So I will start with the good things, the opportunities. what are the opportunities for migrant workers in the age of AI? Basically, the focus of the roundtable discussions was how we can, what are the impacts of AI on migrant workers? An important aspect that was mentioned is that AI digitalization more broadly opens doors. AI-powered collaboration, remote work, crowd work, or digital work facilitated through or by the platform economy can actually help migrants and refugees to access job opportunities and provide them with very important entrepreneurial possibilities. And actually, we're seeing this in practice. We have projects now that are being implemented in Kenya with the support of international organizations like the ILO. And the idea, the aim of those projects is actually to help refugees in remote camps to start their own digital enterprise. So it's very important. I mean, in that respect, AI functions as a positive force vis-a-vis migration. It provides employment opportunities, but at the same time, it triggers another kind of phenomenon, what we call telemigration. Platform work, digital work helps workers access job opportunities globally. And telemigration is actually something that we have studied quite a lot at the TASC platform. And we are very eager to deepening a bit more our research stream in this field. Now, apart from the fact that digitalization and AI opens doors, the issue of labor and skill shortages was discussed during the roundtable discussions. What was particularly highlighted is that Western societies and economies, but not only Western societies and economies, we are seeing this also in countries in Asia, experiencing demographic shifts, population aging, population shrinking, and this, of course, affects labor supply. So there are certain shortages that need to be filled and covered. And who is going to fill the shortages? Will it be AI agents, robots, or migrant workers? Actually, from my discussions, interactions with policymakers in different countries and regions so far, I would say that both options are on the table. We have been seeing countries like Japan introducing more AI-powered robots in the care sector to fill certain shortages there. But at the same time, we are seeing more countries in Europe and elsewhere, countries like Germany, UK, Canada, Australia, signing bilateral agreements with what we call third countries, countries in Africa and Asia, with a view to establishing legal pathways for attracting workers to cover shortages in certain sectors, agriculture, healthcare, tourism, but also STEM-related sectors. So AI or migrant workers, is there competition? I would, again, this is a very important, very pertinent question nowadays for policymakers. And what I want to share with you is that from the standpoint of policymakers, attracting migrant workers is considered a quick fix. What I mean by that is that AI adoption and deployment of AI technologies across economies requires time, requires cost to have in place the proper infrastructure, requires that you work with your workforce to make to help the workforce adapt to the changing labor conditions. So this requires time, resources, effort, whereas labor migration is considered a more readily available solution, always from the standpoint of policymakers. I would say that it's considered as a quick fix, but it's not an easy fix, because policymakers and governments so far have been more interested in attracting migrants rather than helping them to get fully integrated into the labor markets and to ensure conditions of decent work for them. So easy fix, quick fix, but not an easy fix. Now, another dimension that was discussed during the summit has to do with the fact that AI changes the type of migration. What I mean by that is that in the past, demand for migration focused primarily on low-skilled, medium-skilled workers. Now, with the rise of new professions related and associated with AI development, data analysis, cybersecurity, there is demand for specialized migrants. So firms are turning to the global job market to attract high-skilled workers. Of course, we have all of us heard about the global race for talent, right? So in that respect, an element that I find it very important is that AI changes the type of skill sets and the type of migrants sought after. So these are some very important points that were discussed pertaining to the intersection of the two systems, the AI system and the migration/labor migration system. Of course, we discussed challenges pertaining more, affecting more directly migrant workers. And the first challenge has to do with displacement by AI, job displacement by AI. What we are seeing nowadays is that countries like Singapore, for instance, having increased the deployment of AI-powered robots, particularly in sectors normally and usually occupied by migrant workers. Now, the first level outcome of this development is unemployment. Some migrant groups will become, some migrant workers will become unemployed. The second level outcome is deportation. Of course, this has to do with national regulation that varies from countries from countries to countries, but when visas are tied to a specific job offer, then migrants losing that job would need to find a new job within a stipulated time frame. And if migrant workers are not successful in doing so, then they will have to leave the country. And what happens when jobless migrants leave the country and return home? They bring with them the societal cost of unemployment. This is a very important issue, and it's becoming a pressing issue for some countries in Asia at this stage. Another aspect, dimension pertaining to the intersection of the AI system and the migration system that was discussed has to do with the fact that migrant workers have traditionally been disadvantaged compared to native workers in labor markets in host countries. They have usually, we know this from research, academic, policy research, migrant workers have experienced situation having less access to labor market institutions, less access to employment and social services, less access to education and training opportunities for various reasons. It could be discrimination, it could be policies that do not deliver. We have the issue of the recognition of skills and qualifications. The fact that migrants usually do not have strong social networks that can actually help them become stay on the market and become more integrated into the labor market. Now, the issue is that this disadvantage that we are now seeing in the so-called analog labor market is going to become more intense in the AI-driven or digital labor markets. Why? Because AI adoption and AI deployment across economies increases the adaptation burden for all workers. And when we have situations where migrant workers are already disadvantaged, then it means that migrant workers do not have the support that they need, do not have the skills adaptation information they need to be able to be well positioned in AI-powered job markets. So pretty much these are the issues we discussed in the summit. And of course, we didn't discuss, the discussion was not only about challenges and opportunities, but also about responses. What can we do to fix gaps? What we can do to bring the two communities, the AI community and the migration community together. First of all is, of course, drawing on the systems approach. We need to break silos. We need to start a dialogue between the AI community and the migration community, the researchers, experts, civil society, all the stakeholders, policymakers that are involved in these two communities. Bring them together to understand specifically how AI affects migrant workers. So far, we have research studying the effects of AI on native workers, but there are some gaps. We are missing information, more context-specific information, country-specific information, industry-specific information, how AI affects migrant workers. And we need to invest more in research, to invest more in dialogue between the two communities. The second dimension that was particularly highlighted during the roundtable discussions and the panel discussions of the summit has to do with the fact that we need policy action at global level. We're in Geneva, 50 international organizations are based here, so it was inevitable not to discuss about multilateral action and global collaboration. So what was emphasized and highlighted is that the global push for AI regulation that we are seeing nowadays, this global push that has at its core making AI ethical and responsible. All these discourses, this global push, the interventions taking place at international and multilateral level need to integrate insights about how we are able to safeguard the rights of AI affected migrant workers. This is an aspect, this is an element that is missing or not adequately addressed at the moment. So we need to do more in that respect. And at the same time, global policy action needs to trickle down to the regional level. We need to set regional standards, as it was mentioned, that could actually help protect workers within intra-regional labor markets. What I mean by that is that usually in the literature and policy discourses, when we discuss about migration, the focus is on flows, movements, patterns from global south to global north, but there's significant migration happening from south to south, for instance, from Africa to Asia, or within continents, within Asia, within Africa. Actually, according to statistics, in Africa, most of migration happens within the continent. So we need to ensure that labor standards are there to safeguard the rights of AI-affected workers within those intra-regional labor markets. So there's a lot of work to be done there within continents. The African Union should be involved and other regional associations. And last but not least, we emphasized the element of social dialogue, either national level or cross-border. We need social partners, workers' organizations, employers' organizations, governments need to bring the AI migration nexus to the table for discussion. And on top of that, we need to create structures and mechanisms for migrants themselves, refugees themselves, to express their voices, to express their concerns, especially when designing mitigation policies in response to AI developments. Actually, the latter was very much highlighted during the summit. It was mentioned quite emphatically that when migrants themselves, refugees themselves, are included in the negotiation table, are included in policy-making processes, in social dialogue processes, then the whole frame changes. The geometry of thinking changes, and the geometry of action changes. So pretty much, I hope Kitrhona have summed up the, the key takeaways of the summit. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Maria. I always find it fascinating to listen to your thinking. I hope everyone else enjoyed it too and took as many notes as I did, despite being at the summit with Maria. Hearing her summarize it is extremely helpful. And I'm going to use that term geometry of thinking and geometry of action. That's a lovely quotable quote. So now that you're all warmed up and you have some thinking around this intersection between AI and migration, we are going to hand over to you I have too many screens to get involved in the discussion. So at the Future of Work Summit, we created these systems maps. Professor Cédric Dupont created these systems maps as a basis for conversation. They're adapted as a simplified version of the thinking in 2 reports. This one is a map of migration and labor markets created based on the OECD Employment Outlook last year. No, that's the wrong label that I've given. This one is based on the World Bank development report of last year, which focused on migration and had the title of Migrants, Refugees and Societies. And this one, the AI and labor markets, was from the OECD Employment Outlook report, which looked at labor and artificial intelligence. So 2 big topics, 2 big international reports, simplifies into a systems map. Again, highlighting the fact that these are really subjective approaches and basically drawing from the perspectives given in those reports. Today, we wanted to dive into the AI map rather than the migration map, and take advantage of all of you around the table who have come here to the Migration Summit and I think are working in the space of migration in the spirit of bridging those silos, really starting with getting your impression, your opinions on this system of artificial intelligence. So what we'd like you to do as a practical exercise is not get intimidated, log into the Mentimeter at menti.com, use the code 37797543 to open it up either on your desktop or on your phone, and you'll see this map on your screen. It shows the interconnections between AI adoption and a set of subsystems that are happening around the impact it has on the labor market, the impact it has on labor demand, the impact it could have on the green energy transition. And in a very practical sense, the blue dots mean that it's a positive relationship, not in the sense of creating good, but in the sense of adding to the next element. So one adds to the other. It's a strengthening relationship, whether the outcome is positive or negative. And the red arrows, one subtracts from the other or moves things in the opposite direction. What we'd like you to spend 2, 3, maybe 4 minutes doing is use the pin function that we have and locate points where you think migration has an influence on this system of AI and the labor market. So you should be able to place a little pin on your screen, and then hopefully you should see it popping up here live on the screen. Around where you think migration could have an influence on this system. Maybe around areas Maria mentioned, maybe around areas of your own experience, maybe areas that you are actively working on yourselves. From friends in the room, is the Mentimeter working? Has anyone managed to log on and place a pin? Ah, I see one. Lovely. Talking about artificial intelligence is always the technology that stresses me out. If you don't manage to place your pin, don't worry, we will talk about it. You can write any comments in the chat that you'd like to share and discuss, and the next slide is free text, so we can always hear your insights and opinions there. So we can see a few pins appearing around the area of skilled labor demand, unemployment, productivity, work enhancement. I'm going to spend 1 minute not talking so that you can actually engage and think about this map a little bit without me going on in the background. Really lovely watching all of you who have your cameras on. The headache that we're giving you, holding your heads and frowning, looking at this map. So I hope it's stimulating your thinking. The idea is not that we boil the ocean today, but that we give you an idea that as you start to think about these relationships, the map looks simpler than it does when you first view it on your screen. And it gives you a way to start to think about where you can bring your topics together. So a huge thank you for that. We've got points of intervention around the impact on skilled labor demand, the impacts on economic growth, the impacts of labor productivity, work enhancement and creating better work for people. And of course, the risk of either contributing to or retracting from unemployment. You can continue to add to these. The slides will be saved and shared, so we'd love to see those popping up as you all have a chance to look in and play with that. I think regardless of me changing the slides, you should be able to still navigate them. But what I'd like to spend a little bit of time on the next 5 minutes or so is looking at that system of artificial intelligence. If you remember, we spoke at the beginning that a system is a way of seeing how elements work together for a particular purpose or goal. This system was created with an agnostic view, but if we were to create a joint system for migration, AI, and the labor market, I'd love to hear from all of you what you think the purpose or the goals of that system would be. Feel free to hop over and to throw it into the Mentimeter. If you're having any problems with the Mentimeter, you can also put it into the Zoom chat. And we have a hand raise, so I love that you want to jump in. And Essar Hashimi, maybe I can open the mic to you for your question or comment. Let me see if this works. To unmute.
Hello, am I audible?
Hi, yes, we hear you.
Okay, thank you so much for your presentation. I was thoroughly here, but I couldn't listen most of the time. There was distortion in the voice, but I have learned and got the gist of the presentation is about connecting labor markets and migration and AI. But I was wondering, prior to this inception of traditional availability of AI in everybody's hand, but I have noticed that people from various areas in the developing world, in particularly southern, half of the planet, from these developing countries, where these people have been the victim of AI through military technologies, and that victimization has made them displaced from their own respective regions, and they are internally displaced, and then they reach out to the new markets within their own country. They are the migration, they are the immigrants also within their own country. They are internally displaced people, and they are the victim of AI in terms of drone attacks. They are the collateral damage, under collateral damage. They have to leave their areas. They have to witness this, embrace this. That's another thing. Yet I was wondering what we have to think about them instead of bringing in AI into their life to connect them and to. But prior to that, they are the victim of that system. So I would like to hear from you on this, a comment about it, as long as I just perceived through this presentation.
Thank you so much. You completely embraced the spirit of thinking here. We've been narrow in our view of AI, looking at AI interventions in the labor market, on the labor force and in jobs. And of course, AI technologies in other contexts can have a huge impact on people's lives and migration, where they end up entering into that labor market. I think it's something that needs to be thought of in terms of the goal of the system, perhaps, or the next question we'll think of. So I do encourage everyone to bear that in mind, of unintended consequences of AI technology and AI technology in other spaces. Thank you so much for that comment.
Okay.
We've had some really nice ideas here on the screen around a workforce without discrimination, bridging gaps, and thinking about the good and bad impact of AI, global policy, sustainable solutions for migrants, and building new skill sets. Thank you so much for those. Keep them coming if you're still thinking about that. I don't know how to switch to view can scroll. There's even more. Remove bias, enable end-to-end real-time adaptive process. Maybe someone who wrote that can elaborate a little in the Zoom chat about what you meant by the end-to-end real-time adaptive process. Thank you so much for that thinking. So then, with an idea of what a shared goal of the system could be, I think it would be interesting to think about what interventions we could make in the system that could better connect thinking and action on AI and migration. So in that first slide, before we spoke about goals, you were all putting dots around where you think migration could have an impact on this system of artificial intelligence. Oh, sorry, can you not hear me well? I saw comments in the chat. I'm sitting too far from my computer. Is that better?
We hear a bit low, like we can hear you with an effort, but
So sorry about that. Thank you for telling me. Is this better?
yeah,
Do
yeah,
I
thank you.
need to- I will set you up on this and then I'll play with my speaker settings if I can find them and see if I can make myself louder, but I'll speak louder in the meantime. So we would love to hear about what was behind your thinking of placing those dots. What would you like to see happen in this system of AI and migration? Maria threw us some ideas earlier of what kind of intervention ideas came out of the Future of Work Summit, but we'd love to gather your ideas around the table on what interventions could be made in this AI system, which is huge and growing and top of everyone's mind across a multitude of subjects. I think there is no international organization here in Geneva that doesn't have a work stream on AI at the moment. What could we do to better connect thinking on AI and migration and to bring our topic of migration into the arena of artificial intelligence? Enter your topic subjects here, and we've got 10 minutes. This is the heart of our discussion. So if you'd like to comment or raise a hand to jump into the conversation, please do. I will have a look for hands raised and I'll ask Yasmeen on the call as well to have a look out in case anyone would like to jump in. So I see a lot about migrant voice, social dialogue, and formalizing connections between actors. Is anyone working in this space or has practical ideas they can share with the group around how this is happening on the ground?
I didn't put that comment, but I also agree with, you know, many of the things that I'm reading here in terms of also understanding that feeling of uncertainty. I've seen that, you know, with a lot of learners at emerging talent, also like they cannot envision like sometimes the future of their jobs with like how quick things are advancing. And so also like when we think about like AI migration and like the future of work, it's just like how we can develop like new mechanisms of like support, because like everyone is dealing with uncertainty, but also like dealing with uncertainty is also like a skill that we need to develop more and more now because of this, right? Apart from everything that's happening in the world. And so like what are the different elements that we need to design like into our programs when we like try to connect these two topics, and of course like having those conversations like with them in the center for sure. But yeah, so it's really about like what are the skills that we now need to adjust and accelerate because of these new trends and changes for sure.
Thanks so much, Camilla. That was you're preempting our last discussion topic on here. So I'd love to dive into that question of uncertainty and the unknown, which is really at the core of what drove this discussion, the selection of these two topics. They're both rooted in uncertainty in the case of the direction, the opportunities, the context that migrants find themselves in, and of course the impact that artificial intelligence is going to have. I think a lot of what we're trying to do and what we also heard through the summit is the power of embracing this uncertainty. So in systems thinking, looking at areas where there is uncertainty and thinking about not only how we can mitigate that, prepare for that, build literacy on that, but how we can influence it. And how we can empower ourselves. We think of AI and often technology as this huge thing heading our way that's going to change the entire world. But of course, it's man-made and human created. So how can we step up as actors that have interventions to make in this space and in this system to drive what an AI-influenced future looks like? how can the work that we're doing with migrants and displaced populations influence how AI develops in those landscapes and labor markets. So we hope that will stimulate a little thinking from that perspective. Yasmeen, you have a hand up.
We have a question in the chat from SR Hashmi about how to build trust for such migration workers who are always cautious of being in the system, to be connected and are under monitoring through more broad spectrum of AI.
Maria, I've been talking about, how do you think in your work on social dialogue, inclusion, trust building? Maria, would you have any thoughts on that question of building trust? Of course, any comments on anything else you see here?
Yes, thank you, sir. But let's ask our participants. I mean, it's not us, the experts, giving the answers, but from their own experiences, and how can we build trust, actually? Yes, David.
How to build trust is we've got to engage. And so often in our webinars and in our work, and even possibly right here today, we don't have both parts of this. In other words, we have people who are working, who are paid, who are privileged in society. And we are talking amongst ourselves and things, talk about silos. And the way we do it is we have to have some people from the camp. We have to have some people from the places. And we've got to include them. Maybe it's only one or two, maybe it's five. I don't know. But instead of saying, let's talk about this problem, let's talk with this problem. And it's called inclusion, and not talk about inclusion, but actually do it. Instead of just saying, oh, the world should do this. No, we right here, right now, we should be doing it.
That's really a nice answer. That's what I was expecting. It should be more inclusive, and the participants should be here in such seminars and dialogues. Maybe only then the matter of trust could be built among them and the people who are the policymakers, because they're always suspicious about the country that is hosting them. They're always doubtful. They are the displaced people most of the time, migration workers, right? And as I put forward my previous question, I'm not sure you got it as I wanted to place it, because some of the migration workers, some of the immigrants, they are actually the victim of AI. I mean, think about those people who are displaced because of flooding or some environmental degradation. And they claim that this is coming from the developed world, this is from the industrial world, and we are the victim. We are not contributing in terms of COs and carbon emissions, yet we are here to witness this wrath of nature.
How do I raise my hand? It's Megan here. There I am. One of the things, I'm the person that's been adding in, bringing the kind of going back and bringing the migrants into the building of the models, into the data, right? And I think as people start to see themselves reflected in the data, then you become more comfortable with something if you trust also the sources of the data. There's lots of people not trusting AI right now, but I think the people who trust it the most are the ones probably who most of the models have been trained. The models have been trained on things that are familiar to them. But I also think there's opportunity to shift the mindset around just how much, the learners that I work with in emerging talent, how much they are using AI. It is not just being used, in the tools in different ways. It's not just being used by, these people here at MIT who are building some of these models, and starting to bring migrants into the development of the technologies, not just into the use of the technologies, but going back to the root of the development. And I do think there are pathways to do that. It's not, that's more about bringing people together and things like that. But I think in getting richer, better data sources continues to help build that trust. And that means engaging in the development of the technologies, not just the use of it. Would be something I would kind of go back to the start even sooner in the system or in the cycles.
And I would add to that the unintended or innovative uses of technology as well that tend to come out of different populations and different locations. And from Southeast Asia, and how we see any new technology, online payments, WhatsApp, online chat systems, they're being used in completely unintended and innovative ways that really contribute to those societies. So listening, harnessing some of that, getting some of those human stories that there's a comment here about, as well as that routing of data, I think is will really make a difference.
So we mentioned actually this, I mentioned this idea of social dialogue and including migrants into policymaking processes, social dialogue processes, but you, Megan, I think you are bringing to the discussion another important point that has to do with making our innovation systems more inclusive. We need to redesign our innovation systems, right? Mm-hmm. Here, it's not only about policy, but innovation per se, right?
Yeah. I mean, yes, I would really want to dig into what you mean by an innovation system. But yes, I think it's that co-creation and design together, or also recognizing who understands who is the innovator and who holds the information. Yeah.
I, as holding the role of moderator in this session, I realize we're bang on the hour, 7:30. So I want to say a huge thank you to everyone for joining us in our little
follow up.
We'll do one more on the migration map. Thank you all for jumping into our experiments. I think Yasmeen in the chat shared the links to the map, so feel free to engage with them further, look up further material on the Future of Work Summit, and of course stay with our Migration Summit colleagues for the remainder of this fantastic event. Thank you so much for having us. It's a pleasure to work with you all.
Thank you so much, and we very much appreciate also all the reflections and learnings you had from your summit last week. And I want to emphasize, because I definitely agree with a lot of the comments that I've heard here. I myself know a lot of the people that are on the call that are coming from displaced backgrounds. Maybe it's just a matter of learning from this and also trying to see what is the best way to get them engaged. I'm sure this is definitely the willingness that we have in these organizations by hosting these spaces. And so, I'm just motivated to continue to do so in more creative ways and definitely collaboratively. And so I appreciate, the presenters, everyone for joining. We still have 2 more days of events. And in fact, Friday morning before the closing session, we will have an innovators showcase. And so I always say I feel so privileged to get to hear stories and, personal experiences. And we will be having a lot of those there, and so I just shared the agenda on the chat, but I hope to see everyone and continue the conversation. So have a good rest of day, night for everyone on that side of the world, and we'll see you in the rest of the week. Bye everyone.